Hey, everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan, and it's been pretty wild the last few hours. It really started with Jungle Inc. when he asked Brad Garlinghouse if he had any thoughts ahead of the release, and he couldn't go into depth at that time, but he has gone into depth just about 5 minutes ago. We've all waited 18 plus months, and he and Stu Alderati thought that it was well worth the wait. Well, I can tell you, it looks like it was. The docs began dropping at about 2 a.m. East Coast time. There are thousands upon thousands of pages. In fact, here's a transcript just alone of David Schwartz when he gave his deposition, and it's 416 pages. The Crypto Law team, which is John Deaton's firm, is pulling together all the documents unsealed overnight and will begin posting them in the Crypto Law's document library. And they'll have some tweet links as it proceeds. I heard from a Twitter space that it was taking hours to download. Before we go over the tweets that came from the General Counsel, Stu Alderati, and the Ripple CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, they have included a video. I want to play that for you now.
On June 14, 2018, then SEC Director of Corporation Finance William Hinman gave a high-profile speech where he declared that a token is not a security when it becomes, quote, sufficiently decentralized. But internal emails and documents show that senior SEC officials repeatedly warned Hinman that his speech wasn't true to the law and would greatly confuse the markets even more than they already were. Now, after more than 2 years and 7 court orders, we can finally share some of what we found in the Hinman speech documents. The SEC head of trading and markets warned Hinman that he was making up factors that, quote, go beyond the typical Howey analysis, as in not in the law, and that the speech could lead to not just confusion, but greater confusion on what is a security. Hinman ignored him.
If the network on which the token or coin is to function is sufficiently decentralized, and the purchasers no longer have a reasonable expectation that a person or a group is going to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts, those assets might not represent an investment contract.
The same official told Hinman he should tie his speech, quote, more closely and explicitly to the Howey analysis. Hinman not only ignored him, but deliberately created factors beyond those identified by the Supreme Court in the Howey case.
I wanted to just note a few things. This list is not meant to be exhaustive, but these are things that we look at.
The SEC's own general counsel warned specifically that it's legally irrelevant if someone retains a stake in a token and is motivated to take action to increase its value, and that Hinman should delete it from the speech. And once again, Hinman ignored them and said without any legal support that it was important to ask.
Has that person or group retained a stake or other interest in the digital asset such that it would be motivated to expend efforts to cause an increase in the value of the digital asset?
Both Trading and Markets and the General Counsel also disagreed with Hinman's belief that if a network was sufficiently decentralized, information asymmetries would no longer exist, noting that a network creator would likely have more information than a retail holder, using Vitalik Buterin as an example. They warned Hinman that by creating this, quote, other category and focusing on information asymmetries, he was exposing a regulatory gap that the SEC may not have the jurisdiction to fill. Again, Hinman ignored them.
As the network becomes more truly decentralized, the ability to even to identify a promoter or to make the requisite, and someone that could actually make the requisite disclosures becomes in many cases difficult or and perhaps much less meaningful.
On June 4th, Hinman wrote that he didn't see a, quote, need to regulate Ether as a security, and set up a call with Ethereum's co-founder Vitalik Buterin later that week to, quote, confirm our understanding. On June 11th, the SEC's own general counsel advised against including any direct statement about Ether in the speech because it would be difficult for the SEC to, quote, take a different position on Ether in the future. The next day, Trading and Markets wrote that the statements about Ether were, quote, likely to create more confusion. Hinman ignored all of them and decided to make headlines, picking winners and losers instead.
Moreover, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, its decentralized structure, we believe current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions.
The emails show that Hinman knew he wasn't following the law. He knew he was making things up, and he knew that his speech would result in greater confusion in an already confused market. But Hinman went ahead with the speech anyway, and the SEC, despite knowing all this, touted the speech repeatedly. The SEC chairman himself pointed market participants to the speech.
Bill Hinman recently outlined the approach we take to evaluate whether a digital asset is a security, and I encourage you to take a look at Bill's speech, which is available on our website.
The SEC knew the speech didn't follow the law. The SEC knew the speech would create greater confusion, and the SEC knew Hinman was making things up. So why is the Hinman speech still on the SEC's website? Why was it ever allowed to be given at all? And why has the SEC pushed a policy of regulation by enforcement, falsely insisting the rules are clear?
The key points by Stu Alderati is that Hinman ignored the multiple warnings, that this was divorced from the Howey factors, his speech was. It exposed regulatory gaps, and it caused greater confusion. So what does Mr. Alderati say should happen now? The first would be to remove the speech from the SEC website immediately. Number 2, an investigation must be conducted to see who influenced him. And number 3, Hinman tried to create new law, and unelected bureaucrats, he's talking about Gensler, must faithfully apply the law. There is so many references to the speech being orchestrated by Brett Redfern. He formerly was the head of capital markets at Coinbase, also the director of trading and markets at the SEC and with JP Morgan. Well, his bio was also scrubbed. By March 9th of this year, the SEC scrubbed his entire bio, just like they did with Hinman. I think if you ever have worked for the SEC, you might want to keep checking your bio page. Remember, people didn't believe ETHgate was real? Well, the fact that before making that blanket statement on Ethereum, the SEC, went to Buterin and his counsel to discuss what? I thought this was all about determining a digital asset is a security or not was based on law. Well, obviously, it is not. It looks more than just a little clumsy. I think this is an under-the-table arrangement at the very least. Don't forget that John has a stellar panel talking about the Hinman documents today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And before that happens, in about 8 hours, King Solomon is going to host a Twitter space. And just when he put this out, it's going to be myself, Santiago Velez, which if you don't know, he is just an absolute brilliant mind. Really, really fortunate to have him in the space. Tokenizer. And I think who else is coming? Sherry. She is Cherry Empress. Very knowledgeable about the Ripple case. And also Mr. Intuitive, or Mr. I, as a lot of us call him. He's going to be coming in right away, up on stage as a speaker from the start, barring he has no emergencies. The Crypto Law website now has all the Hinman speech documents live. This is really great, very convenient. And thanks, guys. I'm going to let the consumer price index numbers that came out this morning take the video out. This is the CPI, which is really an indicator and tells us how the Fed is going to handle either loosening or tightening in the future. So we might be in for a softer landing than we imagined. So until next time, do take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.
Up 0.1% on CPI headline, exactly as expected, up 0.4. If you look at core, stripping out food and energy, that's exactly as expected as well. Year over year, 4%. Year over year, 4%. We're expecting 4.1. Our last look was 4.9. So indeed, this continues that streak. This is the 11th consecutive month since 9.1% in June of last year, which was the highest level since 81. Each successive month has been lower. And if we look at core, which many believe is is the most important, 5.3%. 5.3, we're expecting 5.2, so it's 1/10 higher, but it's 2/10 lower than the rear view mirror, which is 5.5. This series peaked in September of last year, Becky, at 6.6. That was a 40-year high. However, we did have the month of March, which moved from 5.5 up to 5.6, so it hasn't been continuous. This is lower.